Welcome back to the Social Web TV, the internet TV show that answers the question, who owns your data, with these two simple words, you do. And look, we're mixing it up. Actually, we had to let David and Chris go. We had a little drop in the ratings.
They weren't testing as well, and we had to keep things going. The sponsors were getting a little antsy.
Actually, well, no, they just weren't available this week, and we thought, it's such a big week. Joseph has been working on some really cool stuff that we thought we'd just sort of talk about some of the big things that you've done in the last week and what people can expect to see coming.
And Chris and David are obviously part of all this stuff too. They're going to be at this summit and everything. So, we've been talking for a while about how to open up the social web and how to put all these different open building blocks together so that you as a user can get access to your data and use it across the web. And in preparation for, we're having portable contacts is one of these building blocks that we've talked about in previous shows. Has been making a lot of progress, and there's a portable contacts summit on Thursday hosted by MySpace up in San Francisco, and we're going to have a lot of people from all the big webmail and social network providers and consumers and all sort of coming together to help really get that across the finish line. And so we've us and others been scrambling to get a lot of cool demos and other things ready. And it's been really neat because for the first time, we've actually got working code that puts all of these building blocks together. So you can go, for example, now to a little site that wants to have access to your address book. Maybe it's to be able to share an article with your friends, or to buy something and ship it to somebody, pull out their mailing address from your address book. And rather than having to go scrape webmail or implement some proprietary contact API that's only good for that website, you can now go in and tell it, hey, I use Plaxo or I use any of these providers that use these open standards, and it will automatically go and figure out where your data is, figure out if it's protected, if it's private data, how it needs to get access to it with OAuth and OAuth Discovery, and then let you go in and grant access to that information and pull it down and work with it in a standard way. And it's pretty neat because a lot of these, especially some of these building blocks around discovery, it's very important as a user. If you want to be able to use different services and come to a new site and say, hey, here's where my data is, to be able to advertise somehow, I use Flickr for my photos, or I use Picasa for my photos, or I use Plaxo for my address book, or I use something else for my address book. And so those sort of pieces allow that flexibility of maybe tomorrow I want to change and use somebody else, but it all still works. And when you actually, there hadn't been a lot of code actually written to do this. You had people talking about XRDS Simple and OAuth Discovery and things like that, but it was really, I think, more at the conceptual stage. And so actually getting code working that really does and pulls it down and finds it and pulls the data, it's kind of magical to see it just work automatically, even though you've never heard of this site before, and suddenly you can guide the user through and get their data.
Right, so to have a demo ready for the summit itself, you, with the help, I guess, of one or two other folks, had to put all of these building blocks together. And I think as you went through that implementation experience, you realized that there probably haven't been too many other people who've actually stitched together OpenID, OAuth, XRDS Simple, and this new block portable contacts.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely paving some new roads here, and luckily, I think because of the spirit of these community, we've all grown up in a world of very complicated, convoluted specs made by industry consortia that mere mortal would dare to try to go implement themselves. And so, building an XRDS Simple parser and hooking up OAuth Discovery and doing that sort of stuff wasn't as easy as it could be. Although I hope that now it'll be easier for other people, since that's the nice thing about these open building blocks. All the code that I wrote, I've now open sourced and put into these communities, and so people now hopefully won't have to know all of the details. But even so, it's sort of a day here, a day there, maybe a couple of days there to get these things built. And I do think that's actually a testament to the fact that these were designed to be kind of as simple as possible, each one kind of doing one thing well and then kind of joining them together rather than trying to build one big monolithic thing to do everything. So it's actually been really exciting to see how doable it is. And I think once people really see that magic, I feel like we started with this vision of you as a user should be free to use the tools and services you want and use multiple ones together. And at that level, it actually isn't that hard to understand. But when you actually think about each of the sort of step-by-step pieces that the computer needs to be able to do to make that happen, I feel like we've been diving down and getting it all, and only now are we starting to come up for air, and it actually is all sort of working, and it's very gratifying.
When it works, it's almost like magic. But so we'll go under the covers for a minute. You've talked about the different pieces. One that we haven't spent as much time on in previous shows, XRDS Simple. What the heck is that?
Well, it's not as simple as it might sound, but it's actually...
So it's a deceptively named...
Well, I wouldn't say that. No, it has actually been really good. So this is this discovery piece. So discovery at a high level is, like I said, you want to be able to tell some new site, here's the different tools I use. So here's
Is the DS Discovery Service of service?
Extensible Resource Discovery something or other. Yeah, it came out of the XRI community. And the full XRDS has actually got a lot more bells and whistles. That's why XRDS Simple was sort of a subset of it that was really aimed at this sort of very specific task of letting me kind of list the different online services that I use in a machine discoverable way. And so the idea is essentially, you can imagine me going to a new site and saying, hey, I've got this website or I've got this account on Plaxo or MySpace, and if you want to use OpenID, here's where you go. If you want to access my address book, here's where you go. If you want to access my photos, here's where you go. If you want to publish activity back to my aggregator of choice, here's where you go. And kind of letting me give you a little directory of different services. And then you, as a consumer of that, if you recognize some of those different services, you may not know what everything is, but if you recognize, oh, that's a activity aggregator, I know what that means, I can push to that, then you can start to have this sort of vendor neutral way of integrating your sites together.
So it's we talked previously about OAuth being like valet keys for the web, where you can hand them over and a site can then securely access not every piece of data you have and run amok in your account, but literally get access to just the data you want to give them.
Right.
This discovery mechanism of XRDS Simple then essentially maybe I've got more than one valet key and I want to let you know which ones I have, or...
Yeah, I'm trying to think what's a good real-world analogy, but it's sort of saying, for example, oh, I want to deposit this money. Which bank do you use? And you have to sort of say, here's my routing and transit number. Really, that's sort of the same thing. Here's how you find my bank. And similarly, right, if you think about it, each of the banks support the same standard way of saying, deposit $100. And so if you can just tell the service, here's how you can find my bank, it can then know how to talk to that bank because they speak a common language. But the two are obviously very intertwined. So if Wells Fargo spoke that common language, but I had no way of telling some person, here's how you get to Wells Fargo's computers, then they'd be stuck. So similarly, just having a site speak portable contacts, for example, isn't enough. You have to be able to tell the site, here's where you can get the portable contacts. And certainly from a consumer's perspective, it's very easy for a user to say, oh, you know what, I already have a Plaxo account, or I already have a MySpace account, or I already have a LinkedIn account, or whatever it is. It's very different for them to be able to say, here's the URL of the API endpoint of the, they don't know that technical information. And so being able to just say, click on the Plaxo button or type in linkedin.com or whatever it would be and have it automatically hook up, that works.
So for those who go to the hackathon on Wednesday or happen to be at the summit, they'll get a chance to see not only your demo of a kind of an implementation you've done, but I guess all of this stuff, if you think about it, we're all talking about data portability and interoperability. So
right.
The key will be not any one company's demo, but multiple companies and the ability of these different demos to talk to each other.
And I think you're going to be surprised at how many big names are going to have things ready to demo there and working together. I mean, this not
a couple of good
not to leak too much,
yep.
but it's really great. And I guess one reason that's really thrown fuel on that fire is, I think we mentioned it here before, but we did a bunch of work with the open social community to align the open social APIs and portable contacts so that the act of going in and getting access to your friends list or your address book is the same, whether it's an open social container for a social network or a traditional address book provider using portable contacts. And so what that means is we've now not only aligned the specs so that anyone who's supporting open social is also providing this portable contacts information, we've now also gone and updated the shared reference implementation. So most people who are building open social code aren't building the entire thing from scratch. There's this project called Shindig, which is an open source repository that has working versions in Java and PHP and soon to be other languages. And so now if you pluck those off the shelf, it's pretty much already speaking portable contacts for you. And so a lot of people in that open social community, without having to do any work except stay up with the latest open social, are now able to play in this ecosystem. And it's also, of course, using OAuth and XRDS Simple and that sort of stuff as the building blocks for open social. So we've got a very complementary thing going on right now.
So in other words, this week you took on the hard challenge of building something end to end, being the kind of the first to work it all through. It was painful. But you then also worked on getting this into the reference implementations that others will be able to take off the shelf and drop in.
And that's really why open always wins, right? Because the work is reusable. So the work that I've done, and the work that everybody else has done, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants like everybody else in this community. By contributing it back, you're making it easier for the next guy to build that same thing and contribute their next piece. And the more and more people that start using this, the more incentivized people are to use these open standards, because there's this virtuous cycle. The more data I can get, the more I want to get it, and then the more people who are consuming that, the more people want to be able to provide into that space. And so while of course the trailblazers are going to have it a little bit rougher than the other people, it's all conserved effort, whereas anytime you're dealing with proprietary one-off standards, it's a sunken cost that's not really recoupable.
So this is pretty amazing. What this means is any of the services out there that are in the open social community that implement the new set of RESTful APIs, by being compliant with that standard, they will be Portable Contacts compliant without even a single additional line of code.
That's right.
It also means that these reference implementations that you've helped to bring aligned with that, Shindig, for some services that are not in the open social community but want to get up and running with Portable Contacts, they should be able to leverage those building blocks as well?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So Shindig's got all the code you need, but you don't need to run JavaScript gadgets and stuff on your site. You can pull just the sort of server-side RESTful APIs and use that. So it's sort of a bunch of pieces, and you don't have to do the whole thing. So while a lot of people will, I do think for a lot of people that want to provide Portable Contacts support, pulling Shindig off the shelf and just plugging in the back end of the Get People stuff may well be the fastest way to get up and running. And so, yeah, that's very exciting.
So what then would be your prediction about when Portable Contacts would be kind of a force in the marketplace? Is this next year or next month?
Oh, I think it'll definitely happen this year. I mean, of course, the good news is we're getting lots of very large providers excited about this. I think there's a lot of realities when you're that big about the time it takes to really make things scalable and secure and roll them out and support millions of users. But and obviously I can't be too privy to any specifics there, but it feels to me like this is something that's going to be happening quite soon, and I think it's something that's got already so much momentum behind it, both from the open social side and the pure Portable Contacts side, not to mention all the existing momentum behind OpenID and OAuth and these other building blocks, that it feels to me like a snowball running down the hill. And what that means to me, I think, is that users, I think, very soon are going to get used to this idea that when you go check out some new service, you don't have to start over from scratch. It'll just become, I think, more routine to say, oh, you know what, surprise, surprise, this isn't the first site I've ever used on the web. I've already got an account here, I've already got a profile here, I've already got some friends lists here, I'm already using these other tools, let me start to work with that. And I think young companies in particular are going to really flock to that, because if you're a young company, it's really hard to get people over that hump of, okay, I got to sign up for yet another service, I got to start from scratch. I mean, it's kind of fitting we've got TechCrunch 50 going on this week, so there's another 50 startups right there.
Most of whom are doing something with social or with people data.
Exactly, right? And so each one of those is probably asking themselves, how am I going to get all these people to sign up for yet another service? And so I think that's really going to be the engine that makes people want to make sure that they've got their data in a portable way.
Well, it's really kind of the perfect confluence of things. There's a mandate for Portable Contacts, a mandate really to help the big providers stop people, services from scraping them.
Right.
A mandate to get away from the password anti-pattern that we've talked about in other shows, and a mandate from users to get access to that which is theirs, the data that they've input to the system and want to be able to use across a bunch of different tools and services. So I think we'll look back at this as a fairly historic week with respect to really bringing it all together. That is, of course, assuming that we don't accidentally create some black holes in Europe and create the end of the world. But
yeah, that's another kind of putting all the building blocks together kind of project going on over there. Huh?
Yeah. Are you worried about that at all?
And I'm just worried about getting my OAuth code working.
There you go.
Like this.
All right. Well, hopefully when you see us next, we will have the ability to show you some demos that were created for this summit with some nice interoperability.
And if you'd like to come to the hackathon, it's being held up at 6 Apart by David Recording's company. And it's free. Reggie, maybe you can link up the upcoming link. Wednesday night we'll have pizza, we'll have all the people on hand. So if you want to come and just learn more about these building blocks or try to hack something together, either to show off at the summit or just for fun, I encourage you guys to come up. It's 6 p.m. Wednesday night, and it should be a lot of fun. So yeah,
awesome.
Get involved.
And if you can't do that, no matter what, please join us next week for another exciting episode of The Social Web TV!